I've heard of it, and it just, if this guy's explaining it, it's kind of interesting, and I kind of want to say it.
Imagine you're a deep sea welder.
Actually, I'm about to go to sleep. Definitely a different stream. So, like, if you are going to bed, I won't keep you awake. I won't keep you awake. So yeah.
It's 4 a.m. You're sleeping peacefully on your bunk when you're suddenly woken up by a ringing
If
telephone.
you had to pick, would you pick
answer it.
furry feet or bunny game? Bunny game. What? Okay. Not furry feet. What? No. Okay, wait, bad. Okay. Wait. Yo. I did not.
In a daze, and it's your boss screaming at you to come to the deck immediately and bring a blowtorch. Some kind of problem with the decompression chamber. So you rush out of the room, grab your acetylene.
Wait. I wasn't listening.
Imagine you're a deep sea welder. It's 4 a.m. You're sleeping peacefully on
Deep
your
sea
bunk when you're
welders.
suddenly
Yo,
woken
if
up.
you're a deep sea welder, I'm not on your level. I am never going to be on your level.
By a ringing telephone. You answer it in a daze, and it's your boss screaming at you to come to the deck immediately and bring a blowtorch. Some kind of problem with the decompression chamber. So you rush out of the room, grab your acetylene torch, and head to the deck, where you find crew members rushing around panicked everywhere. You look off to one side and you see a crew member named Billy laid out on the deck, motionless. He's flanked by 2 personnel doing CPR, and in the other direction you see another crew member named Martin. He's writhing on the ground in agony as a medic tightens a tourniquet on his leg. But before you can figure out what happened to them, you hear the sound of your boss screaming at you from the side of the decompression chamber. A hatch needs to be cut open immediately. So you run over there, your heart pounding in your chest, and you realize as you get closer that there's a giant smudge around the hatch. In fact, it's blood.
Ugh!
Lots of blood. Your foot slips as you're running, and you look back to see that you stepped on something that kind of looks like a slab of bacon. In fact, you have to slow down because your feet are sliding everywhere. The whole surface seems to be covered in some kind of grease and other stuff. Finally, you reach the stuck hatch and you light the torch to cut it open, but as you turn to the hatch, you see that it's stuck, but just slightly open, maybe a 5-inch crack in the door. And you glance inside the crack as you start to cut, and you lay eyes on one of the most horrific workplace accidents of all time. An event so disturbing people will still be talking about it 40 years later. That oil rig was the Byford Dolphin. They say when you go in the ocean, you re-enter the food chain. It's a foreign environment, one we're not adapted to or designed
Well,
for.
that was such a happy,
and that's
like...
more true the further down you go.
I was just happy, like...
The weight of the water puts crushing pressure on the body. But sometimes we gotta go down there. Our modern world has a surprisingly extensive undersea infrastructure. From offshore gas drilling to windmills to oil pipelines, undersea cables, there's a lot of stuff at the bottom of
No, real! You cannot have an intro... Nah. I get it, yo, you want to be like, yo, happy, go, like informational, like, yo, YouTuber type shit, but, like, yo, it was, dude, the intro, oh.
the sea that we all rely on.
Crazy.
And all of that needs to be maintained. In fact, it's especially vulnerable to the elements because it's in the ocean. But that maintenance has to be done by people. People who take on a special risk by going down there. Think about how hard.
Oh my god, Caboose! Oh my god, Caboose! Caboose, oh my god. Orko the Feared and Wraith Shark. How y'all doing, man? How y'all doing, man? Hey, welcome back. And Caboose, the main man of the raids all the time. Caboose, welcome back. Appreciate it. As always, I appreciate it. As always, I gotta move this out of the way so you can see this. We are okay. Since it got raided, I'm gonna let y'all in on something. We're watching this video. It's a workplace incident of an underwater welder, and I don't know what happened. And the title is How to Squeeze a Human Being Through a 5-Inch Hole. So we're having a little bit of fun.
You're doing construction work, like welding, bolting, cutting, the kind of
Niche
stuff that would be a
Kev,
tough
should that be
job
my name?
on land, but you're doing it in the water
put
in
people on
basically a
Niche Kev.
spacesuit at depths
For
too low for the
real.
sun to reach, so you're in total darkness. You're dragging
I'm covering his
massive
face.
cables along behind you the entire time, and the seafloor is constantly swirling dirt and mud around you, so visibility is less than zero sometimes. But on top of all of that, maybe the craziest thing about this job is that you have to live in a tiny chamber for 28 days while you're doing all that. It's
That
a
is
process known as saturation diving.
awful. Oh my
So you've
God,
all
why
heard
is he
of the
switching the
bends,
spots
right?
of
It's
it? I
that
gotta keep
condition
moving
that
my
divers
camera
can get if
around.
they ascend too quickly. Well, imagine if instead of going down 20 or 30 feet, you're going down 600 feet or even 2,000 feet. Like, how long would it take to decompress every time you came to the surface? Actually, you don't have to guess. I can tell you. It's a day for every 100 feet of depth. So, yeah, it's 600
A
feet.
day? I don't know what decompress. Okay, yeah. Am I dumb for not knowing what decompressing is? Like, I don't know how to decompress. Like, I mean, I'm not a underwater welder and I'm not a deep sea diver, so I don't really need to know. But yo, I just don't know.
You need 6 days to compress and decompress. According
You sit there and wait? Like you go down that far, you go up a little bit and then wait?
to the internet, anyway. So you can think of it like a bottle of soda, right? So CO2 is added at high pressure, and it causes that to saturate into the water. Just like being underwater at high pressure causes gases to saturate into your blood. It's the same idea. But if you just release the pressure, then all those gases would come out of your blood. Bubbles would just form in your blood vessels. It would not be good. The trick is to turn the cap slowly, like really slowly, slow enough that bubbles just kind of don't form. The gas just sort of easily comes out of the solution. So if you're working down at the bottom of the ocean under those extreme pressures and you've got to go through a long decompression process every single time you come to the surface, a long and dangerous decompression
That looks awful. Yo, that looks awful to live in.
process for that matter, that's a lot of wasted time and a lot of extra risk you're taking on. Unless you just stay pressurized. That's why saturation divers have to live in these tiny decompression chambers for weeks at a time, often up to 28 days. The way it's usually done is there's a pressure chamber on the surface vessel that the crew lives in for, again, up to about 28 days. They take turns working 8-hour shifts down at the sea floor, which they ride down to in a diving bell, kind of like an underwater elevator. After their shift is over, they go back up in the diving bell, dock the diving bell to the pressurized living quarters, and then do what they call a TUP, or a transfer under pressure, into the living quarters. Once that's sealed, the crew can then detach the diving bell for servicing. Although in some cases they do just kind of stay at the bottom of the ocean in a deep sea habitat. Okay, so just to put this pressure in perspective, think about how your ears pop when you're ascending or descending on a plane. So they pressurize planes to be at about the same as 8,000 feet of elevation. That's about 0.74
Dear
atmospheres.
Lord.
So that difference that you're feeling is between 1 atmosphere and 0.74 atmosphere. It's literally a quarter of an atmosphere difference. Saturation divers go from 1 atmosphere up to 19 atmospheres. Some even higher than that. The deepest saturation dive was done in 1992 by a company that was kind of researching the limits of this. They sent a diver to 2,300 feet of depth. That equaled 71.1 atmospheres of pressure. This is still the deepest saturation dive of all time and the most pressure any human being has ever experienced.
Holy
Oh, by the way,
shit.
the air that they breathe in those tanks, it's not just oxygen, it's actually what they call trimix. It's a mixture of oxygen,
I've heard of
nitrogen,
that.
and helium. Helium because it's inert, so it doesn't react to anything, and it's also very low density, which makes it easier to breathe under pressure.
I'll put my face
But being
over
that
his.
it's helium, it does have the expected side effects of breathing helium. That, combined with the fact that sound just kind of works differently under higher pressures, means that these people, some of the most badass construction workers on the planet, people doing construction work on the bottom of the ocean, are talking back and forth to each other, sounding like this.
Hello, hello. Well, it's the 19th of December.
What? No way. My bad, Cooper. I got caught up in a video.
Anyway, I hope that gave you a
After this
smile,
video, I
because
am dough.
the rest of this video is horrifying. The Byford Dolphin
rest
was
of this
drilling
video
in a
is
gas
horrifying.
field in the North Sea on November 5th, 1983. There were 4 divers total, including 2 British divers, Edwin Arthur Coward and Roy P. Lucas, and 2 Norwegian divers, Bjorn Bergeson and Truls
Just so
Hellerich.
y'all see
The
it.
depth that they were diving required that they be pressurized to 9 atmospheres, and they worked in shifts, with the British crew going down together while the Norwegians rested, and then vice versa. In the early morning hours of November 5th, Coward and Lucas were resting in their sleeping chamber, which in diagrams is chamber 2, Bergerson and Helvik had just come back up to the decompression chamber after finishing their 8-hour shift, which actually ran a few hours over. Once at the surface, they docked the diving bell to the decompression chamber with the help of 2 dive tenders.
There's 2 bots in here? No, there's not.
The way it works is that they dock to a trunk.
What do you mean?
Kind of sticks out from the pressure chamber. It's kind of like an airlock in space terms, but once that connection is sealed, the trunk is then pressurized.
Yeah, this story is literally like, dude, I've only seen a little bit, dude. It's crazy, dude. What? They're not bots, bro. Wraith Shark and Orko the bro, they're not bots. Yo, no, they're not. They're not bots. No, they're not. They're not. They're not. I promise. I promise they're not. Nah, they came here from a raid. Nah. Nah, he human. He human. I promise.
To 9 atmospheres. Then the crew can crawl across the tunnel. This is that transfer under pressure that I was talking about. They open the hatch to get into the pressure chamber, climb in, reseal the hatch, and then the dive tenders depressurize the trunk and detach the diving bell. Now, this was something that they did all the time, day after day, but on this particular day, something went wrong. What exactly happened has never been fully understood, though one of the crew did get the brunt of the blame, possibly unfairly. I'll get to that in a minute. Some say it may have been a communication issue.
I'm too dumb to be AI. Hey, don't put yourself down like that.
The stormy conditions that day, but basically what happened is this. Bergerson had entered the chamber first and stood on the opposite side of the chamber while Helvik was in the process of closing the hatch. But just before the hatch was fully closed, one of the dive tenders opened the clamp to free the tunnel from the diving bell. Again, we don't know if it was a communication issue or...
Was Wraith Shark here when I was Joffin? Was he actually? That's gonna live with me forever, my name change.
Mistake brought about by tiredness and fatigue, but when that clamp was loosened, the pressure shot out of that chamber. Just in case you're wondering.
That was a while ago. Hold on, wait.
The diving bell. Again, we don't know if it was a communication issue or a mistake brought about by clamp to free process.
Wait, so...
Some say it may have been a communication issue because of the stormy conditions that day, but basically what happened is this. Bergerson had entered the chamber first and stood on the opposite side of the chamber while Helvik was in the process of closing the hatch. But just before the hatch was fully closed, one of the dive tenders opened the clamp to free the tunnel from the diving bell. Again, we don't know if it was a communication issue or a mistake brought about by tiredness and fatigue, but when that clamp was loosened, the pressure shot out of that chamber. Just in case you're wondering how powerful 9 atmospheres of pressure can be, the diving bell weighed 80,000 pounds.
Holy shit.
This sent it flying across the platform. That diving bell smashed into Crammond and Saunders with the force of a semi-truck at full speed. Crammond held on long enough for the helicopter to rescue him and pick him up, but he died on the way to the hospital. Saunders managed to survive but suffered multiple extensive injuries, including a broken back and a broken neck. He was actually the only survivor of the Byford Dolphin incident, because the 4 guys inside the chambers... Well, this is where things get really grisly. I would give you a content warning and ask you to skip ahead, but let's be honest, if you clicked on this video, this is the part that you came here for. Freaks. Coward Lucas...
Freaks! This video is
Bergerson just
14 more minutes long.
Actually, Bergerson dropped dead because he was standing when it happened. Coward and Lucas were actually in their beds, probably asleep, so they just died. That's what it looked like from the outside, anyway. They just stopped breathing and maybe got a little puffy because instantaneously nitrogen and other gases just surged out of their blood and tissues like a Mentos and Diet Coke. Their blood literally boiled inside of them. In less than a second, there were bubbles filling every inch of their bodies. Blood circulation obviously was impossible, and their bodies just stopped functioning.
Damn.
If you want to try to imagine what that would be like, you might think it would be like suffocating because no blood can get to your brain. Like you might have a brief moment of panic as you become conscious of what's happening. But here's the thing.
Might want to put on Subway
Their brains were
servers.
boiling too. So they weren't aware of anything. It was just over.
At least it was painless though, right? At least it was like a painless death.
The report talked about how this degassing of their blood also kind of solidified lipids and fats in their bodies. And they explain it like this. Quote, in the cardiac chambers and the great vessels around the heart, both arteries and veins, large amounts of free fats were found. This fat was mixed with gas bubbles and looked like sizzling butter in a frying pan.
Instant.
That's horrible.
Okay.
But as horrible as that
So
sounds,
yeah, all
it's what
right.
happened to the fourth diver that's made the Byford Dolphin incident so memorable. Yeah.
Okay, instant. All right, that's good then.
As
At
I was saying
least
before,
that
Hillovic
it
was in the
wasn't
process of
painful.
closing the hatch when this decompression happened. The hatch itself is 60 centimeters,
Hi,
or
beep,
about
boop,
2
beep,
feet in
boop.
diameter.
What?
But it was most of the way closed when it happened, leaving about a 5-inch gap.
5 inches. That's about like this. No, I'm playing. Nah, hold on, I'm playing. That was actually that. I think it's about like this big. Yo, this big of a gap. I'm not fitting through that shit, dude. 5? Is this like 5? 5 inches is half my penis. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Nah.
5-inch gap that Hillovic was standing right in front of. So remember how I was saying that the force was strong enough to throw an 80,000-pound steel diving bell like it's a rag doll? Well, there was that much force, then there was Hillovic, and then there was a 5-inch gap. It literally fired him out of the decompression chamber like a cannon. And he didn't go through smoothly either. To get much more grotesque, his body basically was pushed up against that gap in the door, which was right in front of his abdomen. And the pressure then pushed through his body, sending his abdominal organs flying through the hole. And then the rest of his body folded in half backwards and just got shredded through there. Only everything that I just said happened in a span of microseconds. From an outside perspective, there was just an explosion of body parts that covered the deck of the platform. One body part that they couldn't even
That is insane.
figure out what it was found 10 feet above the decompression chamber. It took 4 body bags to collect all of his remains.
Wow. 4 body bags. Wow. Dude, in microseconds, you get flung like. Wow. Bro, I can't even think about that.
And the investigators still didn't think they got all of it. Now, you might be noticing that I'm not using any actual pictures of the event in this video, and no, I'm not, for all the obvious reasons, but I did use the autopsy report as a source. It is linked below. It's just as brutal as you think, so it is not for the squeamish.
I'm not going to click on that.
It literally just like, it literally...
I will, though, put it there, like in the chat. Nah, I don't know if I should even put it in the chat. I'm not going to click it because
really flayed him apart.
You know.
And because of the way his body folded, it kind of
I don't know if I can put it in the chat.
So yeah, there were like large chunks of skin laying around, including his face. It literally just ripped his face clean off. So it's easy to see why this accident has sort of imprinted itself on our collective psyches. It's gory, it's sensational.
It's so bad.
But for me, I don't know, man.
You know what? I'm gonna look at it. I can't show y'all, but I'm going to look at it. I'm gonna look at it and I'm gonna give a reaction. Was that an ant? Go away, ant. Autopsy report. Curiosity, bro. Curiosity did indeed get to me. The probable position of diver 4 about to close the... Oh my god. This is how big the opening was. That is how big the opening was. Oh my god! Holy shit. Yeah, I can't show this. No, I actually can't show this. If you guys really want to look it up, look up Byford Dolphin autopsy, and the first link, it's to archive. If you want to look it up, huge viewer discretion. Huge. Big Kev was never the same after the stream. No, but for real, dude, it's
Just
that's
It just-
bad.
it's that existential dread place for me, you know, like the idea that 1 second you're there and then 1 second you're everywhere.
That's milliseconds too. What I just saw, that's milliseconds. And you're just gone. Holy shit, dude.
Like, we don't think of our bodies as something that can just like instantly disintegrate like that. Like did he even have time to know that something had gone wrong? Or was it just lights out? I don't know. Some people might say that's the best way to go, just immediate nothingness. But for me,
I don't want to look that. Yeah, don't. Yeah, I shouldn't have even said like look. I am.
I don't like thinking about this. Somebody paid for this, right? Well, I mentioned earlier that one of the divers took most of the blame for it. That diver was Billy Crammond. So yeah, Crammond is one of the dive tenders that was helping to secure the diving bell to the chamber as the crew performed their TUP. And he was the one that pulled the clamp before the chamber hatch had fully closed, which is a mistake he paid for with his life. So when the family
Did that diving bell, like, I want to see how fast that thing flew.
and the governments and the companies behind it were looking for answers for what happened, it was pretty easy for them to just point the finger at him. The company behind it, by the way, was Comex. They were the ones that were operating the Byford Dolphin, and it was in the jurisdiction of the Norwegian government. It was part of their sea area. But yeah, most of the blame landed on Crammond, and in fact, so much hate was directed at Crammond that his widow, Ruth Crammond, had to move away from her home in Edinburgh. But of course, it's not that cut and dried. Obviously, the company wanted to wash their hands of the whole thing, and the easiest way to do that was just to direct all the blame at Crammond, because to take responsibility would cost them a lot of money.
I am never going to financially recover from this.
But the reality is the company did make decisions that contributed to this accident.
I didn't read it. I was just looking at the images. What's wrong with it? Like, are you asking like what, like what's wrong with the images?
And those decisions were
Is that what
also
you're asking? What's wrong with
because
the
it
images?
turns out that this kind of accident was 100% preventable by a simple interlocking.
Know why it's bad? Because why it's bad? Like, why is it bad? Because a body got bent and like ripped through. Like, that's to say, like, what happened to him is to say, like, something like his organs blew out of his like chest, like his stomach, chest, his torso. It just flung straight out, and then bent his body backwards and flung that out. Like,
mechanism that keeps the clamp from releasing until the hatch is closed.
Like, it wasn't even that big. The hole wasn't that big. It was like half of that.
And this wasn't some like fancy newfangled technology. In fact, regulations had been passed in 1982 that made these mandatory on saturation.
Yeah, it was probably a huge explosion.
And dive rigs.
Sound.
But it only applied to new construction projects. The Byford Dolphin was kind of grandfathered in. So they didn't have to install it, but they could have, and they chose not to. At the same time, they were pushing these divers on longer and longer shifts. Industry standard was about 8-hour shifts, but Comex actually lobbied the Norwegian government to allow for longer shifts. This means the divers were working for as long as 14 to 18 hours at a time. So, yeah, I mean, of course they were exhausted and out of their minds at 4 a.m. in a roiling sea. It's almost like...
Why are we seeing this on an Easter day? I have no idea.
Working people way
Why are y'all watching on Easter?
Unsafe. But perhaps the real victims on all of this were the families of the 6 men involved. The Norwegian government did pay some compensation to the families of Bergersen and Helvik because they were Norwegian citizens. Saunders was granted a disability benefits through the UK, though I'm sure it didn't come close to replacing his income. It was the Coward Lucas and Cramen families that suffered the most. They were denied compensation from the company and the Norwegian government until 2009, when the North Sea Divers Alliance brought a lawsuit over the accident. That means their widows raised their children alone for 25 years on just a fraction of what they were expecting to live on. They finally did settle that 2009 lawsuit for an undisclosed amount. The money won't bring back what they lost, obviously, but at least the organizations involved finally took some responsibility. And yeah, Ruth Cramen was able to finally move back to Edinburgh with some measure of vindication. And thankfully, regulations are much tighter in the diving industry today, partly because of the Byford Dolphin incident.
Good.
I guess if there's an upside to horrifying...
Doesn't it suck, though, how, like, it takes an incident like that to happen for there to be restrictions and rules and, like, you know, like, laws that you have to follow, like, to prioritize for, like, it doesn't suck. It has to, that scenario has to happen for new laws to be taken in effect. And new, like, protocols to take. That's the word I'm looking for, protocols. New protocols to go into effect. I want to go into the past and tell myself, just... Yeah, I shouldn't have told anyone to search that up. That's, I'm sorry. That's my bad, and I actually apologize for that. I shouldn't have said anything.
Accidents is that they can actually lead to actual positive change because we're all just so horrified by it. The North Sea is now considered one of the safest places for divers, but no place is completely safe. Like, even with modern technology, deaths of commercial deep sea divers are still reported every year. One of the most horrifying recent events happened in 2022 when 5 underwater welders
I'm not getting canceled. What am I getting canceled for?
were sucked into an oil pipe off the coast of Trinidad. Yeah, the last man that got sucked into the pipe did manage to survive, but he was the only
I saw that too.
survivor. The deaths of the other men have been blamed on criminal negligence by the fuel company. All of which might make you wonder why somebody would ever sign up to do a job so dangerous.
We're going to play
the answer's
Totally
pretty
Accurate
simple.
Battle Simulator after this.
Saturation divers are some of the highest paid construction jobs in the world, and rightfully so. Yet the British divers who were on the Byford Dolphin were making £2,000 per month. That's the equivalent of £14,000 today, although they use euros now. So, but you want to hear what's really crazy? The number of commercial diving deaths is nowhere near the number of deaths from recreational diving. So 2018 is the last year that we have solid numbers for, and there were 55 recreational diving fatalities in the United States and Canada alone, 189 worldwide. The number of commercial diving fatalities in 2018? 6. At least the commercial divers are getting paid well. The recreational divers died just doing it for free. And most of them were in submerged caves. I will never understand why people go cave diving.
Real.
Although, to be fair, there are a lot more recreational divers and commercial saturation divers. Even if it does pay a lot of money, it's still one of the most dangerous jobs in the world. According to the North Sea Divers Alliance, between 1965 and 1990, there were 350 to 400 working saturation divers in the entire world. Out of that count, 56 of them died. That's a 1 in 7 ratio. But that's a risk that saturation divers are willing to take.
Shit.
Because the pay is good, sure, yeah, of course, but it's also important, challenging work, and some people love that kind of challenge, you know? It gives them a purpose. It takes a certain type of person to do this. I mean, these guys give off big astronaut energy.
Alright, he's just talking. I'm gonna stop it right there, but, like, that was a great video, but, that is bad. Very bad. I'm done watching videos for today. I said I would play Totally Accurate Battle Simulator after this. This is I'm playing that for the rest of stream. Play the bunny game. No! No! No!